hold on to workers. I didn't see it. I'll get back to it in a second. But to me, obviously, from a social, economic and financial point of view, it's the labour market that is absolutely crucial. The banking system is still in a very uncertain place, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But suffice to say, at this juncture, credit availability is still a big issue, and there is also still a serious question mark over whether the banks will be nationalised or not. And for anybody who might have seen questions and answers last night, you got two very different views expressed as to whether they would, and the desirability of nationalisation of AIB and Bank of Ireland. So nobody knows the answer. So there's still a huge cloud of uncertainty. And from an economic and business perspective, the key problem is obviously the availability of credit, and that's really the thing that needs to be sorted out, whether the banks remain in private ownership or whether they're nationalised by the state. It's getting credit back in business. That is the crucial challenge. I believe, and I suppose for some people here in the room, in my Bank of Ireland days, I would have done a number of EMU seminars down here and around the country. I believed back in the 90s that membership of the single currency for Ireland would be extremely difficult, because I did not believe, and I'm more convinced of this than ever today, that the political system was capable, the Irish political system was capable of managing an economy in a single currency. It's not rocket science. Quite simply, in an environment where you do not have exchange rate flexibility and where you do not have the ability to devalue your currency, the one thing you have to do to remain competitive is to control the cost base of the economy. And to me, that has been one of the biggest indictments of our economic failure over the last 5 or 6 years. It's the fact that we allowed the cost base of the economy to get totally out of control. And if we want to get back on track, if we want to exploit the international recovery, which will happen over the next couple of years, we just need, as an economy and as businesses, to become a hell of a lot more competitive again. It's quite simple. I don't believe we've addressed that agenda properly in recent years. Confidence across the economy is still extremely fragile. There is no doubt about that. And I suppose within that context, I don't want to be political about it, but I think if you talk to consumers out there, if you talk to business leaders out there, one of the key issues that many people are trying to grapple with at the moment is the lack of leadership. I mean, I just firmly believe in an environment where confidence is so fragile that leadership is the minimum requirement to get people back into the business of doing business again. Back in 1987, from a situation of serious crisis in the economy, Ray McSharry, Charlie Haughey, Alan Dukes, just to keep the political balance, they stood up. They provided extremely strong political leadership. People bought into it, and almost overnight, confidence started to recover in the economy. I think over the last couple of years, we've been very poorly served on the whole political leadership. You need strong, decisive political leadership. You need a leadership that convinces you, or attempts to convince you, that there is a strategic vision for this country. Not in the very short term, but in the medium to long term. I don't think we've been getting that leadership. I think it's about time we deserve it. We need it. Social partnership model, in my view, has become, well, unfortunately it hasn't become redundant. It should have become redundant in recent years, because I just think that the social partnership model delivered us partly into the mess that we're in at the moment. And I just don't believe social partnership model is capable of getting us out of this. We need to change it. I just think that, we elect politicians to run the country. We do not elect IBEC. We do not elect the trade union movement. We do not elect CORI. I think they've had way too much influence on the decisions that have been made in this country in recent years. And I think the social partners have presided over the loss of competitiveness we've seen in recent years. So the demise of social partnership would, in my view, be very desirable for the Irish economy at this stage. It would put the onus on the political leadership to do what we elect them to do, run the country in a prudent way. The other, I suppose, Irish reality that I would feel very strongly about is the external image of Ireland. Last week, Paul Krugman described Ireland as coastal Florida without the snakes. And for anybody that's been to coastal Florida over the last couple of years, the housing market has collapsed. There was a banking boom there which created a bubble. It has burst. Serious economic and financial and social difficulties there. That's fairly similar to where Ireland now finds itself. So rather than criticising Krugman, I think we should take the message on board and prove him wrong ultimately. Back in 1987, there was a similarly defining moment in my view when the Economist magazine ran a piece which described Ireland as the poorest of the rich. We reacted with indignation at the time, but I think sensible people realised the Economist was right. We were an economic and political failure at that stage, and it did kick us it provided the stimulus or the catalyst to turn around and to address the very real problems in the economy. So I think we should take the sort of analysis that Krugman and indeed the International Monetary Fund were providing last week and react and prove them wrong ultimately. Okay, so, but what it's all telling us is that the international image of Ireland PLC has been very seriously damaged over the last couple of years. As the economic and financial story has unfolded, that has obviously sent out very negative messages. But if you superimpose on top of that the totally unacceptable corporate governance issues that have arisen, particularly within the banking sector, it does not inspire international confidence. And from the point of view of foreign direct investment into this country, and from the point of view of financial investment into this country in terms of our bond market, in terms of our equity market, the external image is extremely important. Okay, people argue we shouldn't beat ourselves up about this, that a lot of other countries like the United States have had similar sorts of image problems. But the reality is, and I think this is an important reality, big economies can sustain it. Small open economies like ourselves cannot sustain it, because at the end of the day, when Ireland appears on the radar screen of an international investor, it's going to be for a minute or two, and we need to ensure that the message they're seeing is a positive one. Unfortunately, the messages that have been going out over the last couple of years have been extremely negative. So we really, really need to try, and well, not to try, we just need to restore the tarnished international image of the Irish economy and the business system. The causes of the current crisis, okay, the external situation is obviously extremely important. Externally, and as we've seen it again yesterday with the revelations about the swine flu, for example, the external environment has been absolutely dreadful over the last 12 or 18 months, and that has clearly had a huge impact on a small open economy. But I also think, as I've alluded to, I think the stance of economic policy in this country in recent years has been inappropriate. Quite frankly, in an environment where we were cutting taxes, where interest rates were artificially low for the Irish economy and inappropriately low up to quite recently, government should have been keeping a very tight rein on public spending. Allowing current spending grow 10 to 12% at the peak of an economic cycle is economic lunacy. So that's the big mistake. We just threw too much fuel into the fire, and we seriously undermined our competitive situation. We hear all this rhetoric going on about the cost of living in this country, about rip-off Ireland, so why people are going north of the border to shop, why we're getting disinvestment from major multinationals such as Dell. The bottom line is, if you throw too much fuel onto a fire, if demand exceeds supply, the price levels are going to rise, and that's exactly what we've done in recent years. We've priced ourselves out of many economic markets, so we need to address that. We've had way too much dependence on the construction sector. It became way too an important part of the Irish economy, and in a sense it created false complacence, or